This is Sarah Pop, the Multimedia-Storyteller, here to tell you another story. This one is about Missouri and the pioneers that came 200 years ago to set up this great state that we live in now. And welcome to any of the other visitors out there. So help us by liking the video, by sharing it to a page that you might have on Facebook or your home page. And let's get ready to learn about Missouri and learn about the pioneer children and how they survived what was going on during the time of those early times in Missouri. All right, so I've got to switch hats here. All right, so now I have on my pioneer dress that's from the mid-1800s. And I have in front of me some toys and other things that I will share with you about what the children did as far as games and what they also did as far as chores. And sometimes it was a mixture of the two. All right, let me see if I can get myself in my little studio. I moved, so I'm in a new place, and I'm just trying out the light and trying out the different places to be here. Okay, so I wanted to, and I know this is backwards. I started to flip the screen, and then I was like, well, that gets awkward with where my hands are when I'm showing you. So they would have used chalkboards for a lot of their writing, and I thought, you know, let's talk about 200, bicentennial. That's our birthday. That's Missouri's birthday. And so 2 means, the bi means 2, and then the centennial means 100. How about you help me wishing Missouri a happy birthday? Would you sing with me? Happy birthday to you. I don't sing very good, but I like to sing. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Missouri. Happy birthday to you.
And many more.
Oh, that's my husband in the background over there with his bass voice. Okay, so it's coming up pretty soon in August that it will be that official date. August the 10th is that official date when Missouri came into the Union, into the United States. How did we get our name? Why did I say Missouri? Maybe you said Missouri. They're both right. You know, it depends on what area of the country, how you grew up. My mother and dad always insisted that I say Missouri, and so that's kind of how I have always done it. However, there are other people out there that don't. Well, you know what I found out? I found out there's a reason why some of us say one and some of us say the other. Actually, Missouri means big canoe. So I brought my little canoe, my little play Barbie canoe, that I made for the Grand Girls, and that's what the word means, and it comes from an Indian tribe that was located here in our area, and they're called the Missouri. Well, that takes it all in. Missouri was the Indian tribe's name. These canoes, they were made out of a tree, a big old huge tree. That's how Daniel Boone and those people that came in that late 1700s time, actually Daniel Boone came to Missouri before it became a state. So they took a big tree, they hollowed it out, put their possessions in, and came forward. Have you ever ridden a canoe? If you could tell me in the post, that'd be great. I'd love to hear about that. What was it like? I hear too that the canoes, they would sink them in the river way down and let them stay there, and that way they preserved them. And sometimes they even find those canoes today, ones that have been preserved down there for a really long time. Now, if you would want to make a canoe, here's an idea, because that's what I'm going to try to do. Since we're virtual instead of hands-on, I thought I'd just give you some ideas about how you might be able to have a project to go with that. How about an egg carton, a foam egg carton? The granddaughters made one of those, and it floats real nice. So that could be something you could do. Our area of Missouri, in the Kansas City area, we had a lot of Osage and Missouri Indians that lived in our area. Now, the Indians had a different kind of doll that the children made. They had a lot of corn shucks around, so they made corn shuck dolls. of the, and I'll have to like go back and find some of my things. I tried to put them close so I'll be able to see and be able to do this for you. One of the things that the girls did, they had graces. That's a game you play. And so, we have a hoop, and we have 2 sticks. And so each person has a stick, and then they try to catch this, and they do it gracefully. It's to practice, bending down, catching the stick, passing it back and forth, and it's very easy to do if you have a dress on. Now, sometimes the boys played it, but it was mainly for the girls because the girls were learning to be ladies when their time for marriage came. Okay, so now, what is this? Anybody out there know what this is? Is it a toy? Is it something for chores? Well, actually, it is a washboard. So they would take their clothes, and they had to do their chores before they got a chance to have fun. So they would take and wash their clothes. And then one day, one of the little boys were out there, and they're going, "Oh, that makes a nice noise." So then when they wanted music, because they didn't have the kind of toys we have now, when they wanted to make music, then they would take, whoa, that's loud. But they could produce rhythms with the washboard. They could also do that while they were helping their mother hang the clothes. Let's see. Have you ever done a clothespin like this? The old-fashioned clothespins? And then these are nice to turn into little dolls. So they were always looking for what they had. They didn't go to the store and buy things like we do. They were just always looking around. What do we have? What can we make with what we have? And even the little pieces of material like this, they learned how to make dolls with. Now, ropes. Oh, you better be careful. You better be careful with those ropes. If you go out and you want to jump rope, with your friend, and the only rope you know where is around the mule, oh my goodness, your father is not going to be happy. He is not going to be happy with you. Now this is one, there's a machine that takes the small ropes and twists them together so they are larger. This is actually one that I did this. A lot of the festivals around me watching. Hi, Mildred. Hi, Melinda. Good to see you. This is a rope that I actually did at a festival down in Kansas City at the Westport Historical Society a few years ago. And so I have my own rope. So this could be used for multiple uses. The children could borrow it. But you also could hang it up between 2 trees. And then you would be able to hang your clothes up to dry. Sometimes, if they didn't have anything else, they might just use a bush to lay their clothes on. But the children had to do their chores before they got to play. They had to get those chores done. And sometimes they didn't get to play very often. Even in my father's generation, which went back a lot to the way the pioneers lived, he lived through the Depression. They only got one afternoon a week to play, and that was Sunday. Because time they went to school, they came home, there were so many chores to do, it was dark time they got finished. Now maybe if they had a few little toys in the house, they might have gotten to do a little bit of that. So now let's say Dad, we've got the rope, and Dad's going to get really mad. He's got the mule tied up to the fence. How are we going to make a rope? Well, we could take Mom's rag basket, and we can tie rags together. That's one way we could do it. Also, we could tie honeysuckle vine together. And maybe this is one that you might have done. We could go out into the clover patch, and we could tie clovers together. And the girls also would make necklaces and hair pieces for that. And if you look in the Civil War era, they wore a lot of flowers. The fancy ladies wore a lot of flowers on their head and their head pieces. So that would have been something the girls could have done, and they would be in training. So they're always in training for when they become an adult. So that's how they just kind of how they live their life. The girls tried to follow after mom and tried to learn all they could about how to make a house and keep up all the work. The clothes, they made the clothes, and just everything they had is so different than today. Have you ever kicked a can? Maybe accidentally you did. But that's actually a game they had. This one would have been as the cans came to be in the Civil War time. So two people get a can. This is a really easy one you could do. You could do a soda pop can. You could take two people with a soda pop can and see who can keep it under control. And they go out from the point you were standing out to the point that you decide out there. Hi, Karen. So those are things that are simple, and that's what they looked for. They looked for simple things that they could do along. Maybe they had to walk to school, and they kicked the can on the way to school. Now here's one. This is the broom. They had dirt floors many times. Many of those old cabins and old buildings had dirt floors, but they still kept it clean. It was a different kind of clean than we think about, but they kept it nice and neat. And plus, the family pounded on it with their feet, so the dirt became harder, and then they would sweep the excess off. So maybe your job today is to sweep the cabin. Well, Mom's not around. How about some dancing with the broom? How about going for a dance with the broom? You could do that with your mom's broom today. Maybe when we're not looking, maybe Mom does it with her broom because she's a little bored of her chores. So that's kind of fun. Oh, hi, Gus. I'm glad you're watching me. I know Lydia, my granddaughter, she danced with that broom the other day because I had a Pioneer house set up for her. So if you just set out items like this, then it's fun to just go and play with them instead of some of our modern day items. All right, so now we're going to do the lumberjack dance. The lumberjack dance. Let me get my lumberjack and his equipment to dance. So the lumberjack had a paddle kind of like this, and the person would slide this under their leg when they're sitting down. And then they would just kind of wiggle it up and down. And then the lumberjack is a series of pieces of wood they would have probably, this one is with eyes and hooks. Those would have probably been with string. They wouldn't have had as much of the technology that we have or the money to buy those. And so he's jointed at every joint that we think about that we have. I guess he doesn't have elbows and knees, but he's got lots of joints. And so then this is stuck between your leg and your chair. And then he jumps. He kicks, he twirls. Now, we think about this going, oh, well, that's not much of a toy maybe. However, you've got to think about the fact that they didn't have toys like we do. They didn't have batteries. They didn't have electricity. Wheels for a vehicle like a wagon had to be carved out. They didn't have that mechanism that we had. So something that spins around, jumps, kicks, they said it was a leg slapping, hand clapping kind of time when you did this. I can see a kid over maybe at a dance or something having this, or maybe they just were, bored and they'd gotten to go to town that day. And they actually, hi Mandy, they actually were able to have a little fun with an animated toy that they didn't often have back then. Okay, so they had a lot of fun, just not our kind of fun. That's the way it was back then. All right, so now, this is called a bean flipper. When I heard my father talk about it and then I researched, I was like, a bean flipper? A bean flipper, he said. And this is definitely one that the boys would have used. You know, girls used them too, but sometimes we classify those into classifications, especially back in that time, because there were jobs that the women did, there were jobs that the men did, and the boys followed after the men, and the girls followed after the women. So it's actually, we would refer to it as a slingshot. Now this one kind of borders toy slash, if you got really good, you could bring home supper. And I know we think about that different because we aren't involved in the processing of our meat these days. I don't know too much about that, but Dad would call this a bean flipper. And so I was reading about these. I always try to read a little bit more and learn a little bit more when I do a program, so that I can, even if you've heard me talk before, you'll gain a little more knowledge. So, this has to be some kind of rubber, something that you can pull back. Because this is a piece of leather, some kind of rubber, and then you can find a stick and cut it like this, or you can have something that you carve out. This one is a carved out one. And those, in 1840, Goodyear developed rubber, vulcanized rubber. So these would have been, in that mid-1800s kind of time, Civil War kind of time, these would have been around. And then, of course, you would have wanted to pick stones. Let's see, I had a few stones out. You would have gone and picked a little rock, one that might fly through the air, all right. And, when I was reading about it, it's like the boys were very helpful when they were able to bring home, not only have fun with these, be careful not to hurt anybody with them, but bring home supper. That was an important thing. Hi, Kara. Good to see you. So there's our bean flipper slingshot. So a few years ago, we inherited some miniature cannons. And I didn't know, I was trying to think, what are these? Well, as I told you, I keep reading and learning, and trying to put together what went on back in the 1800s. And I came across someone that said, "Oh, well, those aren't for what you think. Those aren't really toys. Those are signals." So, oh, hi, Nicholas. Good to see you, Nicholas. Well, you might like this one, Nicholas, because the boys would, they had these little signal cannons, and sometimes the boys would use those. However, that wasn't available, and it was not safe for the boys to use. But there are things that the boys did use to make a toy slash something Mom could call you home for supper. So this is a whistle. This one is a wooden whistle. And you could learn to play a tune with that. When I was a little girl, my mother took me out in the woods at spring, and we made willow whistles. So I thought what I would do is I will try, after this is over, I will put some instructions for if you decided you wanted to make some of the things I show you. So this is one that is lots of fun. Now, I'm thinking to myself, we have a cell phone. If you're down the street playing in the neighbor's house, and your mom, it's almost time to eat, and Mom wants you to come home, or you're playing outside on the other side of the barn, how are you going to know when it's time to eat? How are you going to know? And so you could have this, but you could also, there's also a variety of ones, and they're made from horns. Well, shucks. So, a mom could have had, a boy could have had, maybe the boy had this one out with him, or the girl had this one out here. Yes, calling for dinner, the dinner bell. They did have a dinner bell. Many of them did. And so maybe this one's the signal for, the oldest son. This is the signal for the daughter. This one means it's time to come home and eat. They had a dinner bell. A lot of them had one. I actually have a horn, since I've just moved. It's not unpacked yet, but I have a horn that in 1825 my great grandparents used to call them in from the fields. So this would have been a little bit after the Civil War time, but that my great grandmother used it. Of course, if it's 1825 was what was carved on it, that's going to be prior to the Civil War. But that's what they used it for. So they communicated. We just have to stop and think about how they communicated. One time I was on the way home from school. I taught school for a number of years in Blue Springs, and my phone was messing up, and I thought, I just don't want to even mess with a cell phone anymore. You know, it was before they're as easy to use as they are now. So I thought about getting rid of it. My daughter said, "You can't do that, Mom, no." And I thought, I drove all my life until now without a cell phone. And now you think I can't drive a car without a cell phone? But they had different ways of communicating than we do. And so as I learn and as I read, I enjoy learning about how did they do it? Because they managed or we wouldn't be here. You know, if the people prior to us hadn't survived, if those pioneers hadn't come to Missouri, it was the, Missouri territory. It was actually, as I was reading, before Daniel Boone came, it had been owned by France, and it was owned by Spain. The Spanish government decided that people didn't have to be Catholic to come to Missouri, and so Daniel Boone decided to come with a bunch of people. Then Napoleon got it, and of course then Thomas Jefferson bought the land from Napoleon for the United States to have. And that's then when people started coming to Missouri prior to that statehood time and settling here and then bringing their ideas. And many of the toys and things that we talk about are actually colonial. They were used in colonial time. The graces are one. The whistles would be one. Now, what about walking home from school? Is anybody out there? Did you walk home from school? How far was that walk? Somebody was telling me that how the parents are always talking about walking uphill and downhill, and in the books you'll read about them walking uphill and downhill, and they were making fun of them about it. And I was like, well, you walk up a hill and down a hill, up a hill and down a hill. Well, on the way back, you're still walking up and down. It wasn't like you were walking up the hill to the school and down the hill home. There were multiple hills along the way. The children only got to go to school a little bit. There's certain times of year, and that's if there was a teacher around, and if there was a schoolhouse that many times the church and a school would share the same building. Talking about that, paper was really expensive. Civil War time, I was thinking about this compared to the cell phone or the large TVs that many people are wanting now, and you walk in there and go, I don't want to pay that. Well, they used the chalkboards to communicate for the children to learn at school. If you wanted to draw, you didn't just go get a piece of paper, you drew on a chalkboard. And so the chalkboard was very important. Now, when the Civil War era came, there's a lot of letters that are left from people during the Civil War more than previous generations. And what I learned is that that's because paper became cheaper. So I'm kind of comparing that to like our cell phone. Most everybody has a cell phone these days. Some are more expensive and some are, less expensive, but most of us have some type of cell phone. And so it's become cheap enough that the average person has it. And so in the Civil War, paper became cheap enough that the average, adult person has it. And I'm sure if you were in the right family, the children also had it. And then you see a lot of cutting of designs and all kinds of paper items that come to be that the children get to do when they have time on their hands. Now, how about that afternoon snack? It takes 30 minutes to walk home. It's been a long time since lunch. And I'm kicking my can on my way home. I'm playing a game with my friend. I'm kicking the can. Oh, and it's frost. We just have a frost, and it's October. And I look over there in that tree. There are persimmons up there. And so I climb up and eat persimmons. There used to be a couple of trees over there in Lee Summit where my school was. Behind the school, there were a couple of trees that had persimmons. And after that frost, you want to wait till after that frost. Because if you don't, they can be bitter. And if you don't have any water with you, you're walking home, you don't have easy access to water, it could be a little hard on that pucker. And so they learned, along the way, and the people helped each other. I think that's one of the things that I've learned, how much they did travel, how much they did help each other out along the way. Now, last year I did a program for Mid-Continent where I taught about how to make a rag doll. And, of course, that would be one that would be very good for girls to make, especially. When I make it, I always make soldiers or sometimes just a farmer for the boys, because I never want the boys to be left out when we do those things. However, the girls would have been, in the pioneer times, would have been the main ones to do that. Hi, Kathy. And the types of rag dolls vary. It varies depending on what they had learned to do, what kind of scraps they have. I showed you the corn husk doll. If they grew corn, that was an easy one, easy access, and you dip the corn husk into water and get it so that it's pliable, and then you're able to bend it and tie it into the shape that you want. Now, when my daughter was little, she didn't necessarily have to have a doll. She just had something she called a doll. So sometimes, if a child needs something to cuddle, to love, it doesn't have to be. And I actually bought this one, and it's just a corn cob. It's just a corn cob. Oh, it has eyes on that side. I guess they must have turned it around. And so it's just a piece of material tied up, and it's a corn cob. And the children love this one too, just as much as they love the other one. So they're learning to be a mother. Tyron and D-A-I, welcome to the program. Yes, welcome to our program. And this is one that's going to be on the Mid-Continent Facebook page even after I finish. So if you know someone that's interested in learning about Pioneer toys, learning a little bit about what the children went through, and of course, as you hear, I'm lacing in there some of what the adults were doing too. These were, prior to the Civil War, these were hard times, differently than during the Civil War. In the Civil War, I was talking about how people helped each other. Well, I read an account, and this was somebody coming to Lexington, a lady coming to Lexington with her children, and she's looking as she's passing someone along the road, and she says, "Oh, we always were neighbors helping neighbors." She said, "Now I haven't the strength to help her. I'm barely making it with me and my children." And so as I think about that, I think that's one of the really hard pieces of wartime, of the Civil War in this instance, but of wartime, is we reach out to help each other, and when something goes wrong, and yet now you can't. So the girls would have, taken scraps. Mother would have had a scrap box, and they would have taken scraps that were too small for making quilts. So the mom would make the clothes. The mom made all the clothes, and the girls helped with that. My mother-in-law always talks about how she has a little hole in her head, she thinks, because her mother would take the thimble anytime she looked out the window instead of helping to sew. So that's a Depression-era person. Those similar things happened in those pioneer times. I thought that one is the typical of how I usually make them. This one is, sometimes they call it a church doll or a handkerchief. And so this one they just put a little stuffing up in here and tied it off. This one is kind of made like that too. It just isn't that one's embroidered and made fancier. This is one that we would make at the Westport Historical Society. So I've been involved in all kinds of different history places around the Kansas City area, And if you want to learn more about pioneers, search out, Jackson County and the greater Kansas City area there, and look. This is the 200th anniversary of the Santa Fe Trail, also, and so there's going to be a lot of programs that you can learn a lot from. Now, I wanted to show you this. What I learned. Actually, I learned this at Mid-Continent. I was at the Genealogy Center teaching ragdolls a few years ago. And the kids were having a hard time tying string, because I always tied string or yarn around the edges to put the dolls together. And this lady, she stayed a little bit later. I said, oh, I've got an idea for you. I always learn from other people. I love it when I can learn from other people. So if you have an idea for me, hey, I am open to how to be a better teacher and a better presenter. So I'm always open to those kind of things. So what I did is I went and got little bitty rubber bands. There's some little bitty ones out there that younger girls tie their hair with. You see that? And so that's how we did this. And it sure does help, because the fun part is getting to decorate your doll how you want. So each of these layers, this is just a very simple doll. I went out to Missouri Town a few years ago, and this is the based off of what I learned out there. So I've got pieces, just rectangle pieces. The one I showed last year, because we were in the pandemic and we were trying to things that you have at home, is I made paper doll. Paper towel dolls. So I just have, a larger one for the body. Size doesn't matter. It's just that the body's a little bit bigger than the dress and the apron. And if you want a boy out of that, you take the legs and you twist off legs there. So they learned how to dress a doll, how to dress a baby by dressing a doll, and so they were always having fun with that. Melinda, hi, nice to see you. Thanks for coming. Okay, so there's a couple of toys I want to show you that are in my Pioneer collection that you would have had to have somebody who was doing some woodworking to have, but they're through our Pioneer culture, but also other times too. It's called a cup and a ball. Okay, so if you read in the comments, at 10 a.m. tomorrow, we will have another fun history-themed program here. So you might like to check into that. So what you do is you throw this up, and then you try to get it in there. And usually it's good to see how many times it takes you to get it. Improves your skill, improves your, you being able to throw the rope over the horse or the mule to get it where you want. Would be a skill that would be for. Now this is one that's a similar thing. So there's two cups. This one is a little easier. I say that as I mess up. Yeah, someone's got a comment on there about church dolls were made that way, so if you dropped them in church, they didn't make noise. I'm sure that's true. I always took things to church for my children that they wouldn't make noise with. So that's our cup and our ball. Okay, so this is another one that is a little bit harder to make. However, you can take a little plastic and put a stick, even a sharpened little pencil through it, and do a top. Tops have been around for years and years. There are fancier ones. This one has a spindle it fit in. So there are fancier ones out there. And all you have to do is have two tops and then see who spins the longest. Okay. Oh, here is one. This is a paper towel doll that I actually made this one 5 or 6 years ago when we were in the anniversary of the Civil War. So even the brown towels, this is like industrial towels, the brown towels. At my school, the janitors used to bring me the leftover rolls, and that makes a real nice one. All right, so, there's all kinds of fun ways to do life. Have you ever, let's see if I can find the right bag. I got everything in bags around here. Have you ever put together a puzzle? Well, hey, that's fun. A puzzle's fun. However, they call this one a puzzle. Now, it's a little different kind of puzzle. You have to use a little more creativity than putting together a regular puzzle like we think of. So I could see me doing something like this as a pioneer child. So you go around and you pick up rocks and nails and wood pieces, and you put them together in a design, and you nail or glue them onto a piece of wood. Something that we do that's a little bit similar that they also did too is they collected seeds, and they would put together a picture of seeds, which I say we did that too. I guess I am referring to when I was a little girl, and I realize some people out there watching are going to be quite a bit younger than me and have children right now. So that's one, and that's an easy one to duplicate because you could do straws, you could do popsicle sticks, make a design from those. I'm trying not to forget anything, so I have me some papers here. Okay, now one that I used to do, and then I've read that they did in the pioneer times too, was we had a playhouse out in the dirt, and the hill in front of my grandma's house. Grandma could still see us. She wasn't in good health, and she wanted to watch us play. And so we would take rocks, we would collect our rocks, and then we would line them out. We didn't have a wooden playhouse. We didn't have, plastic ones weren't invented yet. And so what we did is we took rocks and we lined them up, and we made rooms. My sister had one, I had one, my cousin had one, and you were not allowed into my room unless I let you. So the room was just divided off into a section by rocks that we found. Sometimes it might be sticks too. We also created a sink to wash our dishes in, and what we did is we dug out a little spot in the dirt, and so we were pretending those skills. We were working on those skills that it took to be a good homemaker. Now, another thing that they did is they didn't have Ziploc bags. I remember a time when we didn't have Ziploc bags. Ziploc bags changed my life quite a bit. So what they did is they would keep little pieces of material. This one just happens to be a bandana. They would wrap. You could do a pouch and pull it together like I've done on this, but you can wrap around. So if you had a sandwich, you might wrap it around like this, and you might tie it. And then there's your Ziploc. That's the Pioneer Ziploc. Okay. Now, sometimes they use things we might think are a little different. Have you ever played with a balloon? My mother talks about, and there's other instances I've read in some of the Pioneer books, that when they were butchering a hog, they had to butcher the meat because they didn't have any other way. They couldn't just go to the grocery store and buy it. And they would blow up the bladder. And that would be a balloon, and they would use that. It's the difference between their time and our time, and how life is lived then and how life is lived now. Let's see. They would take the rings off of barrels, and they would get a stick, and they would learn to guide this along, and they would push that along. Now, they did a lot of walking, and sometimes they knitted while they walked or read while they walked, and so something like this would help them learn to be sturdier, and straighter and more balanced when they were doing that. But they did use this in races. They would race with those. That's one that was done in pioneer times. Also, some of the people that lived on the farm in later times, even in the Depression era, my parents, of course, were that age, and many things that the pioneers did. They were using the colonial times, then they were using the pioneer times, and then they came forward. And several things, many things, there's an adaptation of that for right now. Hi, Bridget. Nice to see you. So remember, this will be on. I'm going to save this and then put it on to Mid-Continent site when I get finished with this program. If you have somebody else, and if you could give us a like, that helps us be able to say we want some more programs like this. So if you can give us a like, go ahead and do that, please. Okay, so now this one is called Jacob's Ladder. And so there again, it's a toy that doesn't have animation. And Mr. Roberts put the evaluation form in there. Please fill those out. Whether you like my program or whether you don't, please fill it out. I want you to be able to have programs to your liking. And I try my hardest to learn more things, to bring you a quality program, and yet I realize that I may not be your favorite. Okay, now this one is a newer one. Let me show you this older one. So these are just little pieces of wood, and what you do is you put ribbons on there. There are instructions for these too. This one was made by my father. So these would have been pioneer times, but they also came forward into that Depression era. Thank you, Kara. Thank you. This one came into the Depression era, and they still, a lot of times, the museums and all will sell, that have pioneer things will sell. They did little, they did dice. So they might carve out a little bit of, there's all kinds of games you can play with dice. Let's see, what else do I have here? I don't know, but I moved to a different place, and actually there was a bear. This one's not old-timey. It's just a little bear I have in my case here, but there was actually a bear in my town. Would you believe that? Now, here's an easy one to make. So this one is actually a game I fixed for, because I help museums with children's programs. And this one is a checkerboard. So we just took a piece of cotton material. You can take a piece of paper and divide it off into little squares. And then, one that would be easy for these days would be just to save some soda cap lids. Some kind of plastic lids that come off of a bottle you might have. These are just little wooden pieces that I was able to get. You could also get rocks. And you could either put put a little dot on them with something, or you could find white rocks and tan rocks. That's up to you. But this is an easy one. It's all contained. You just put them all back in there, and little piece of material. Put them in a pouch. They did a lot of things in a pouch. Now sometimes I like to sew a pouch. Those are a little bit harder, and you have to be a little bit older. This is actually one that I put together. I went to the thrift store, and I found a leather jacket, and then I made me a little pouch. This one contains marbles. These are clay marbles that I made, so they're not all as round as they should be. I'm sure they played marbles with whatever they found, whatever kind of rocks. Some of those rocks I was showing you with the slingshot, those could be used. You might find a shooter. The shooter's the big one that you shoot the other marbles out of the circle with. And you might find one of those and you keep it and you carry it in your pocket in a different place than you carry these. So clay items, would have been, where I grew up down in southeast Missouri, clay was easy to find. And I know even in the Kansas City area, I would have children who I taught who would bring clay from their house. And we actually fired it in my kiln at school. So that was kind of a fun little piece to have. Okay, so let's see. I'm getting closer to the end of this. Let's see. Oh, I was going to show you this one. This one has several different names. Button on a string. Now you can get wooden buttons, or you can just get a button. Maybe you have some buttons in a jar. People don't do that quite as much anymore, but you might be able to find a grandma that has some. If not, you can buy a button or a wooden piece that has the holes in it. You can also, these are cut out of illustration board. You could take some cardstock and put it together, or you could do an illustration board. And as you see, it's not even quite a circle. Now, if they don't spin as good as you want, sometimes it's because you didn't put your holes even, or you didn't make it heavy enough. It needs a little bit of weight to it. Okay, so now my son, he is the best at this. I'm only so-so. So now what I did was put red and yellow so that hopefully it gives it a little bit of orange cast, and then you wind it. Now some people, I call them whizzers because it makes a whizzing noise. Some people call them a buzz saw. And let's see, the whizzer, buzz saw, there was one other name. Button on a string, just simply button on a string. So here again, this can be something that is real easy, a real easy Pioneer toy. It's one that can be carried. Oh, I forgot to tell you about we were talking about doing it while the girls were doing chores. The rag doll, they would put a string around their waist or a rope around their waist, and they would stick their rag doll in it, and then that way they could carry it. That's even in some of the diaries when people were traveling out to Oregon. Those have been noted in the diary that that's what the girls did. Well, it's about that time to wind us down. I hope you've learned something. I always try to figure out, well, how I can get enough information in there that hopefully everybody learns something. I found this at Mid-Continent. It's going to be backwards there. I tried to flip it around, but like I said, it makes my things awkward when I'm trying to show you. And they have some Missouri fun facts. So you'll have to stop by one of the branches and get one of these. Kansas City is the largest city in Missouri. Hey, we beat St. Louis. Yay, don't kill them. And then we talked about Missouri's name, where it came from. Hawthorn is the state flower. Bluebird is the state bird. Show Me State is our nickname. And I have used that so many times when I'm outstate. Well, you're just going to have to show me because I'm from Missouri. And we became a state August the 10th, 1821. I recently visited Texas, and it was awfully fun. However, my heart belongs to Missouri. My heart belongs to Missouri. Kathy Ann, I see you. Thanks for watching. I'm so glad that a lot of you put your names in there so that I could say something on screen for you. Like I told you, I hope you have learned something, and I will be following up with some posts underneath this of some different ideas of something that you might do with Pioneer Toys or teach. And Robert put that in there. The evaluation is in there. Please fill it out. Keep this great system that Mid-Continent has. Keep it going for us. Really keep it going. I really feel that it's of value to the children, the adults of the community. So thanks for watching me. It's been a great morning. You have a great afternoon. And do something fun. Just celebrate our birthday. We only get a 200th birthday once. All right, you guys have a great day. This is Sarah Pop, the Multimedia Storyteller, and I love telling you stories.